Hi, Mark.
Hey, Joy,
Yes,
I'm checking my audio.
I hear
Are we
you.
good?
Yep, loud and clear. Hi, John.
Mm.
Joy.
Yeah.
Hi. I talked to Greg today about what you wanted to say about the hard copy packets too. So if you want to maybe right after roll call.
Sure. Yeah, sounds good.
And I will try to remember to record.
Okay. Perfect. You're on the ball, Elise.
Yeah. Oh, well.
Yeah,
Been a good decision so far, knocking on wood.
I was gonna say,
Yeah, I had that and I couldn't get into a car. I couldn't walk. So I finally just had it replaced. Eventually I'll have to have the other one too, but not for a few years.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Greg can't walk, but that's a whole different reason.
That's a whole different story.
Recording in progress.
Uh-oh.
watch what you say now.
Did you do that, Joy?
I can't tell who did that. It's a
Okay.
secret.
All right, it is 6:30, and we will call the meeting to order. First item on the agenda is a roll call, please.
Smelly,
Yes, here.
Glish,
Here.
Meyer, Molden,
Here.
Smithback, Severson,
Here.
Bano,
Here.
and Mar.
Here.
Excellent. Thank you. Move on then to the approval of the minutes of May 6, 2021.
Greg, can I ask a quick question?
Oh, I'm sorry. Go right ahead. Yes.
I just wanted to double check with the planning members to see, now that we've been doing Zoom for a while, and a lot of people have either larger monitors or even multiple monitors. I just wanted to double check that everybody would still like to receive a paper copy of the packet. So you don't have to decide right now, but if you could email me and just let me know, yes, you would still like to receive a paper copy, that would be. Thank you.
Well, I don't have a big monitor, and I am on now a controlled income.
And that's okay. I just wanted to double check that
No,
for sure people are using those and
appreciate that. Yeah, everybody, if you can, please. I think if we look at our packet tonight, it's obviously large just for one item. And, you know, it's
Yeah.
John, I figured you'd be looking at it, but the rest of us probably only look at a couple of pages. So,
yeah, just email me. That would be great.
all right.
Thank
Okay.
you.
All right, we'll do that. Thank you so much, Joy. Okay, we'll move on then to the approval of minutes of May 6, 2021 for Plan Commission. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
So
Move,
moved.
Bano. Second, Bano.
Second, Bino. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. We'll move on to item 4, public appearances. There's been some discussion on this. The public appearances at this point for the community input 4A allows us 15 minutes in 3-minute segments to receive any comments from the general public regarding items that are not on the agenda. We can at that time ask questions and answer questions regarding procedure, and that's all. So is anybody from the public that has any requests to talk to the Village Plan Commission about anything other than the agenda? We have none. Thank you. We'll move on. We're going to move on to item 4A, or it should be 4B. Conceptual discussion with Great Dane Brewing and Dan Butler. Reason is for a potential brewery at 109 or 102 Alpine Parkway. Elise, you want to just make a comment first?
Sure. Thanks, Greg. So this is the site that is right on Alpine and CC. just next to Miller Dental and the bank building that the village has purchased for the new village hall. We were approached a couple months ago by Dan Bertler and a couple representatives from the Great Dane. They're looking to consolidate all their brewing operations to one location and have sort of a tap room, small restaurant attached to that as well. So I know we have Blake from Supreme Structures on here. He did a lot of the design work, and I'm not sure if we've got Dan or anyone from the Great Dane to speak a little bit more about the operations. A lot of that is kind of summarized here in the memo. But
Yep, it's just going to be me
hand it over.
tonight. At least
Okay.
Dan's out. Rob might be on, but I do have some follow-up questions that we gave him, and I'll kind of go through hours of operation, some of the smells that might potentially affect the neighborhood. So I can kind of go through all of those once we kind of show some of the imagery.
Sure. I can scroll through some of these if you want to just.
Sure, yeah, we can start right here. So this is kind of an aerial view of what we're proposing. The building is about 11,000 square feet on one floor and a mezzanine. The brewery itself will be about 7,000 square feet. That's towards the back. So you can see how it's situated on the Alpine and CC. You would enter the property off the Alpine on that shared drive. And then we're situating all the tasting rooms towards CC and the future development park possibilities across the street. So we really want to engage the streets, have ample outdoor space for people to enjoy while using the park facilities. If you want to keep going to the next one.
I'm trying to figure out who has
Yep.
music going on in the background.
It might be Dan. He left with the remote, so there is a little bit of music going on in our office.
Okay.
So I apologize if there is any muffled sounds. So I'll kind of talk fast here. This is another aerial view, just kind of showing some of the parking. Towards the front would be patrons. Towards the back would be brewery, brew staff and kitchen staff. To the left there's a loading dock. And then to the front of that little loading dock area would be shipping and receiving. And then to the front of that would be their commissary kitchen. So they might be preparing some foods to take to some of their other locations around the county. And then the front, we're starting to see some of those outdoor patios facing Highway CC. And then one thing to note, we do have nice circulation on the property to get some of the larger vehicles in and out and around. And this slide I added just because we know that we have neighbors and we want to be good neighbors. And so we want to make sure that we have, dense trees, lots of vegetation to hide some of the uglier parts of the operation, trash enclosures. Spent grain is one thing that does sit out. So we're tucking that close to the building. We will be building an enclosure for that. We don't want people to, see some of those uglier things. So we do want to pay special attention to our surrounding neighbors. Keep going there. So now this is some of the imagery of the building itself. This is the corner of CC and Alpine. You can see some of the materials that we're using are brick, a insulated metal panel, something that'll be an upgraded look. It's not going to look like a warehouse at all. Storefront windows, and then some cast stone accents. You're starting to see kind of our layered effect that we have towards the streetscape. This is a little bit closer. So we're seeing our patios. So we have a lower patio and then an upper deck with garage doors that open up so we can have the indoor, outdoor. We're getting a lot of feedback that after COVID, people really do enjoy that indoor, outdoor, airy feel. And then this is showing the east side of the property, the possibility of a yard where we can have games, picnic tables, possibly a food truck may come in, probably be Great Dane food truck. But we just want to make sure that we show this as a possibility. And keep going. And this is just kind of a groundscape of that. This next slide, that shows the entry off of Alpine. So this is what people first see as they enter the property. So we really want to make sure that every facade is dressed up. We haven't left any piece of the building kind of left to the wayside. So we'll have some signage or silo, and then we will be working hard to make sure that our landscape is appropriate and can hide some of the uglier areas. Let me keep going there. This is showing our loading dock. So again, we're showing lots of trees, kind of giving some shade to that ugly loading dock from the apartments to the west. This is just showing some of the decks. This is the upper deck with the garage doors that open up. So great views of the park across CC. And keep going. And then we also want to make sure that, because we do have inclement weather, that there's a portion of the deck that has retractable awnings so that we can either shade or get out of the weather. And then same thing, this is down the lower decks. We have that same kind of a system. And this is the outdoor ground floor patio then. All right, well, that's it for the imagery, but I'll kind of go through some of the questions that Rob wanted us to make sure that we came across to you guys. So hours of operation for the brewery would be 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. The employees for the brewery would be about 4. Deliveries per day, or he actually changed it per week. There's not gonna be too many. It's about 4, so not too many deliveries. Trucks per day, mostly just van shuttle trucks. So they're not large trucks. They'll be kind of smaller van size trucks. And then there will be one farmer about 5 times a week that comes and grabs that spent grain. So he'll be coming in to get that trailer and he spreads it on his fields. And then pneumatic semi delivering the grain once a month. So that's our bigger semi. So once a month again. So it's not a daily large semi going through the property. Smell was the next thing. So they're going to do about 2 brews a day. That's about 1.5 hours where there might be some smell. It's hard to predict who will smell it, what the severity of the smell might be, depending on the wind, humidity, all those factors. But we just want to make sure that we let you know that they are doing 2 brews a day. And maybe at some point, Rob can kind of give more insight into how pungent that smell might be. The restaurant, they'll have 15 employees. And no, this isn't day one. This is projected to be in the future when, you know, if this thing is really at max capacity, probably 15 employees. So we want to give you our max, our worst case scenarios. Hours of operation for the restaurant, 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. Tuesday through Friday, 12 p.m. to 10 p.m. Saturday, and then 12 p.m. to 8 on Sunday. Full bar, he's hoping that they'll be able to offer more than just their beer, and they're working on that and a menu for what those might be. And that's all he had for kind of his questions, so I guess we'll open it up to anything you guys might have for us.
Yeah, Randy.
Sorry, Randy, I may have muted you.
All right, thank you. So Blake, the food part, I'm interested. You said maybe there'd be a truck. I saw on the packet, it said maybe a small kitchen. Will there be food right from the get-go? And
there will be, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
There will be food right from the get-go, and they are developing a small menu. It won't be full Great Dane menu. It'll be a pared down version that goes along with more of a tasting room. We have to keep in mind that this is not the Great Dane restaurant. It's just a tasting room. So I got a glimpse at the menu, and it looks like, you know, soft pretzels and cheese, things that you can handheld, nothing that's plated. But they will be offering food because they're serving alcohol.
Okay, thank you.
Greg, One thing I forgot to mention is just, so this is planned business zoning, and with the sort of light industrial brewery distribution type use, what we've recommended to them when they move forward is a planned development zoning. And then the GDP would call out the more kind of industrial uses as well as the restaurant uses, and probably that food truck possibility as allowable uses as part of their application.
As we get further into the process here.
Yep.
Right. Question, you're making 2 brews a day. How many barrels are you brewing each time?
That I don't know, so I'll have to get back to you
It's
on
not
that one.
important. I was just curious how big your
Yeah, if Rob was on, he could spit those numbers out pretty quick.
I do
This
remember
is Larry
hearing.
Marr here. I had a question as to whether you were be set up for or offering a community meeting type of a space in your facility.
Yes, there will be a small mezzanine, and it's going to be about, let me get the numbers, 1,600 square feet. So you will be able to rent out the second floor, and you're able to have your own space. We're looking at a future small bar up there, and then you have access to the outdoor patio. So yeah, great community space that can be rented out and separated from the rest of the facility.
Okay, thank you.
I do remember hearing one of our staff meetings, Blake, when we met with you and Rob and Dan, that where the brewing is happening right now in Fitchburg and downtown Madison, there's a lot of residential, multifamily residential nearby, and there's not been any complaints with regards to the smell in those areas that are adjacent to the existing breweries.
Correct, yeah. And I know that Rob and his team are just, they try to be really good neighbors and make sure that they're not offending anybody. So yeah, like you said, there hasn't been any complaints, and they are all in sort of residential neighborhoods.
Blake, I think that what you've got right now presented, you've oriented the building well. I think it's an attractive building. I think it's nice. It's a nice setup. You've done a good job at sort of screening and creating traffic flow for large and small vehicles. I would also be curious to find out, as Greg had mentioned, how many barrels and how many cans of beer, because it seems like the number of trips is a little light, especially if you're going to be facilitating, supplying product to how many stores now?
No,
3, 4?
I don't think they're going to be. Go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt. I don't believe they're going to do any canning. Is that correct? I don't think there's a canning facility here.
It says canning
There will be.
operations.
There will be.
There will be some canning. Yep.
Because you don't have any canning available at this time, do you?
No, yeah, it goes off site to do that. There's a third party person that does that. So there will be a small canning machine that's going to be put in there. So we'll have to follow up with Rob on how often they're picking up those cans, where they're going. There's a large cooler that's inside that houses all of that, plus some staging area. I believe it'd be one larger trip versus multiple, but I'll have to confirm that with Rob.
That's fine. And then if you're going to be doing those cold storage where they can pick them up, as long as the hours of those are as you had mentioned, from 7 to 7, that'd be preferable. But I know that sometimes even the canning operations can get a little loud. So I just want to have a little bit more clarification on the system of delivery and drop-offs for that product.
You got it.
The other thing, Blake, the bigger question for me is, and I don't mean to bring this up as a thorn, I'm assuming this kind of is like the Wisconsin brewing that's in Verona-ish, kind of, sort of.
They would be a little bit bigger operation. They would just be servicing Great Dane beers. They're not looking to be like Occupy or
Right.
Wisconsin Brewery, where they're going to be taking other people. But yeah, they're just be brewing their own beer to service their other restaurants, so they can get a little bit more space. There's a lot of real estate that is expensive to brew multiple times in multiple different areas. So if they can consolidate, it's just nicer for them.
Yep. And I understand that. I'm just using that as a point of reference. But one thing that they've got is, and then I'm hoping that we can mitigate here is the need for parking. They are always at those locations, whether you go to them, tough to find parking spots. How many,
Sure.
what is the capacity that you're looking at for the restaurant and tap room portion of this?
So right now I'm showing 45 parking spots for patrons and 16 additional for staff. And remember, staff really do work in the morning hours for the brewery portion. And they're kind of done by 10, 11 o'clock in the morning. So some of those spaces will open up. So hopefully that'll go up to about 50 spaces.
Okay. But the capacity that you've got a 1,600 square foot community or large space upstairs. You've got some outdoor patios. You've got a tap room on the first floor. You've got some outdoor sort of, picnic game areas. Obviously, the capacity is going to be more than 50. But that's kind of what you've got limited for your parking right now. So I'm curious to know what your capacity that you're intending for the building will be.
So max capacity would be about 250. That's including outdoor spaces, indoor spaces. If every single seat is full inside and outside.
Okay. So that's something that's something that we're going to have to talk about, because that's a huge disparity between the number of stalls that you've got provided. Even if 2 people come in a car or 3 people come in a car, we're still talking a shortage of stalls. So that's something that we're going to have a conversation about, and let's be realistic about it, I guess, as this moves forward.
It may be a matter of just reducing some of the seating in the upstairs or something like that, just to kind of keep our counts down.
Sure.
Yes, we'll definitely talk about.
All right.
I think that was about all that I had right now. I think that it's a project that, could work here.
Yeah. I think it's a good fit for the area. So it's, but again, it's, I'm thinking from what I'm hearing, and tell me if I'm wrong, Blake, if this is not really a facility that is shaped or patterned after the other Great Dane facilities.
Correct. Yeah, totally new concept. It truly is a tasting room and brewery operation. So, the majority of the building is for their brewing operations, but we wanted to have an element for the public to come and visit.
Right. All right. Yeah, I think John says correctly, though. We just certainly have to consider and take a look at the parking issue and make sure that's addressed.
You got it.
All right. Anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, this is Patrick. Couple questions and a couple comments. You talked a little bit about materials. You mentioned insulated metal panels. I'm assuming that's the tall, gray, kind of 2-story part of the building.
Correct.
So thank you for a nice presentation. I think this will make a great addition to the village. The only thing that stuck out to me was the east facade, and I realize it's preliminary to be looking at a lot of these details, but the east facade, there's really no articulation on it. On the north facade, it looks like you have some hops or I'm assuming hops that are growing. So
something, yeah, something, yep.
Yeah. So the first question I had is, why are there no windows on that east facade like the west facade, clear story windows?
So part of that is screening the mechanicals. So I'm building that wall up taller, so our mechanicals are hidden behind there. So there actually is no 2-story portion there.
Gotcha.
So no windows.
Okay.
The below there is their commissary kitchen. So we need kind of all the wall space we can get. And then beyond that is their shipping receiving. So no windows there as well. It's all gonna be stacked kegs and things like that. But we could definitely do some more landscaping, or if you like, do some more articulation on that side. Just to dress it up a little bit. I know that some people's views from those apartment buildings are going to be that wall. So we can definitely look at that side.
Right. And then the other thing, you went through the hours of operations, and I didn't hear Thursdays, and specifically the first Thursday of the month, which traditionally is the planning commission meeting. And I just wanted to see that you'd be open after our meeting.
So yeah,
They're open till
4 to
9
9
o'clock.
Tuesday. Tuesday through Friday, open
Okay.
until 9 o'clock. Yep. And then if you guys go late, we can definitely keep it open longer.
Depends on how
Wise
windy
man,
Patrick is. It depends on Patrick. That's what it depends on.
There you go.
All right. Good. I think it's a nice project. And it sounds like everybody's more or less in agreement. So appreciate the presentation.
Great. You got to appreciate us having the time, and we'll definitely address some of these comments, and look forward to working with you all.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry to keep interrupting. Nobody's seemed to ask, what is your time frame on this? I think it's 2022. Is that correct? Or
Yeah. Yep.
okay. All right. All right. So we'll be seeing you again. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. Appreciate it.
Yep. Thanks. Take care. Moving on to item number 4C, conceptual discussion with Culvers and Dan Bertler, potential development on Park Street for a Culvers. At least you're back on, I guess.
All right. So, yep, old Waterfall Motel site that Dan purchased from the village about 2 years ago. Been working to find a user, and looks like things have lined up with Culvers. They're really excited about this site. One thing we want to just emphasize is this would be a corporately owned Culvers, so owned by the Culvers family, not a franchised store like the majority of the other ones kind of in our surrounding communities. And the exciting thing here is that they're looking at sort of a next generation prototype, and the guys from Culvers will speak a little bit more to what that means. But a little bit updated store design, site design for the drive-through, updated kitchen layout, things like that. They are hoping to have a closing on the property in the fall this year, so around September, October timeframe. And the hope is that they would be able to get their zoning and site plan approvals through Planning Commission and Village Board through the course of the summer and early fall, so that those are wrapped up before the closing happens. Assuming things move forward too, we might see a CSM of the property as soon as your June 30th meeting. There's 2 parcels out there right now, so combining those as well. So I will turn this over to the Culvers team to speak a little bit to the site plan that they've shared and kind of their concept for what this store might look like.
Thank you, Elise. This is Todd Reimer with Culvers. We also have Steve Datka on the call tonight. I'm Director of Real Estate and Development. Steve is Director of Design and Construction. I want to thank Elise for allowing us the time tonight to at least give an early glimpse at this project. I can tell you after following that last presentation, we're not as far along as Dane Brewing, although I'm thirsty. So here's where we are on this. We have negotiated a purchase agreement with the owner, and we are working through the due diligence items and expect to have those wrapped up sometime this fall with an outside closing date of sometime in October. As Elise pointed out, this is going to be a Craig Culver entity restaurant. And if you think about the Culver chain right now, we have just over 800 restaurants, and only a handful of those are not franchised. So this not only would be owned by Craig and family, this is going to be the first of a brand new prototype. And so when you're looking at this site plan up on the screen right now, know that we are guessing at the building size. We haven't seen a survey yet, so we're sort of guessing at a lot of things here. But what this restaurant is designed to do is move Culver's forward in terms of technology, drive-through, anything technology inside the restaurant, making us more productive, etc. This site in general is considerably larger than we would typically find out there in the field right now. For a franchisee looking to open a new location, we're probably looking at 1.25 acres, somewhere in there. Drive-throughs are incredibly important now, and we're looking at other technology as far as taking orders. A typical one would have 55, 60 stalls. This site would accommodate considerably more than that. We put a couple of tentative ingress egress points on here, and again, we put this together. We have the in-house technology to do this and make revisions, but this was something that we just put on paper for tonight as a point of discussion. We're working with the village on a few things behind the scenes, and again, I think if you take a look at our time frame, we're just looking to wrap up as many due diligence items as we can before the fall, so we can close. Because this is a brand new prototype, we really haven't started much of the planning as far as what the plans will look like, what the elevations will look like. Mostly what we've done is we're looking at internal things, how to make the store more efficient or the restaurant more efficient, those kind of things. We've actually hired a firm that's helping us with that. So even though this is almost cart ahead of the horse, we just wanted to bring it up tonight so you guys would have an initial look.
Okay. Anybody have any questions? I know my daughter-in-law just told me, are you going to approve it tonight? I said, no, you're not yet. Not yet. So. As asked about a half an hour ago.
Okay.
Tell her you're bringing home burgers tonight.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, or we could all go to the brewery.
Anyway, I think it's a wonderful, and it's kind of exciting the fact that it's a prototype for some new technology for you people. So that's kind of nice to have.
Well,
in
my world,
the Culver Corporation, that's in fact.
This is kind of a big deal, right? When Craig Culver comes in your office and sits down and says, hey, this is something I want to do. There aren't many of those available. And certainly there's only one first new prototype, and that's what we're talking about here.
Todd, I got a couple of questions for you. So I'm seeing the double kiosk for the drive-through, and I'm seeing an 18-car queue. Is the intention for this new prototype, because one of the hangups that you see at most Culvers, and I'm not trying to pick on anybody or the chain itself, is that the queue line is really long, and that you've got the stacking of cars afterwards. So I'm assuming the 18-car queue is what you have determined is what you need for this type of prototype, and that the 11-car stacking after the fact is about what you're looking to have? Or is that just sort of a place that you're starting with this development right now?
It's more of the latter, John. I think that, you know, to have a problem with stacking is a good problem to have. And frankly, we have enough room on the site here to work through those kind of things so that we're not creating a problem anywhere else. But no, this was just, the reason those cars are there is because they fit.
Yeah, that's kind of what I figured. But as we obviously, and you've done this before, it's not your first rodeo. Those are things that we'll be looking for, or I'll be looking for, is some justification or reasoning behind that.
Yeah, us too, right? Because part of the reasoning for having a new prototype is to get those cars through faster, right. And technology will help with that. Right. A new kitchen design will help with that. But yeah, you're correct. And frankly, it doesn't do us any good to have a huge long line of cars anyway.
Right. And Todd, I appreciate the 5 stalls that you've got out there for larger vehicles. I think that's a nice amenity to have, especially if you've got the real estate to take advantage of. But it makes me wonder, though, as I'm looking at the rest of the parking, the building itself on this prototype, what are you looking at right now for an interior seating capacity-ish?
Well, we do have Steve on the line that could maybe answer that. My guess is that's preliminary and probably too early for us to answer, though.
Yeah.
I can jump in, Todd, absolutely. So right now our standard prototypes are about 100 seats. right, the smaller prototype that we've been building in the past is about 85 to 90. Like Todd says, we're probably shooting for somewhere in that area, simply because we know that drive-through sales are increasing, but dine-in sales are kind of lagging a little bit and kind of being a little more stagnant.
Okay.
So we're probably shooting anywhere between a 90 to 110 seats. Somewhere in there is probably what we're going to be designing for.
Okay.
The other piece I can kind of add to this, right? We're talking about the stacking and the number of cars that are in the stack. The other thing we really want to make sure that we do and do it effectively is really kind of separate the vehicular traffic with the pedestrian traffic. And we really want to make sure that there's a safety factor there for anybody coming in and using the dining room and trying to separate the vehicular with that dining room traffic. And so that might be why you see, right, so many cars that might be stacked up that way. But that's intentional to try to keep those cars away from people using the interior of the restaurant and the patio.
Right. And I appreciate that and completely am on board with that. It would be, as you go through this process too, having done projects similar to this, you know, the parking field itself seems to be far away from where the building is. The majority of the parking stalls are a long way away, and people are generally lazy. So the 9 parking stalls that are sort of on the northeast corner, you know, those kinds of things are like the last to be used. And where I'm angling at is we did a McDonald's on the north side of town that we approved a secondary parking field for that hardly ever gets used. And I don't want to create another facility that is parked for a 100-year event. But with that being said, I know that you need to have enough parking stalls for your need. And I want to try to make sure that we are creating a parking layout that is easily accessible to your store and is also reasonable to be used. So as you go through this, it's the voodoo that you do. I mean, I'm not telling you anything that you don't know. So those are just things that I'll be looking for as well. The other thing is on Janesville Street, the access point, you've got a right turn in, right turn out. I think that's the right answer. I would even go so far as to say that we need to have an island that's in the middle, because you will have that person who's trying to cut across Janesville Street to enter. So as you develop this, keep that in mind.
And I think there's also an island out in Janesville. Is there? No, it looks like it's just.
It looks like it's a mountable curb one.
They might be, yeah. But yeah, I agree. A splitter island, splitter island forcing a right hand out and right hand in.
Yeah.
Okay, we get that.
Just to piggyback on what John was saying, my initial reaction to this, it's exciting. I think Oregon could certainly use a culvers. I think most people agree. I think it's a nice use of this site, but my first reaction looking at it is, wow, that's a lot of asphalt. So screening is going to be essential, good landscaping. And in my experience, Culvers does a pretty nice job, but that's something that I'm going to be looking for is how the green space is used. And you talked about dining, and I heard inside dining. I didn't hear anything about outside dining. Usually Culvers has a few outside tables. Is that an assumption that it'll be like that here as well?
Correct.
I believe this patio area, I mean, again, knowing that this is in flux, but that's sort of placeholder for that outdoor dining.
Is that kind of stone area, which would be kind of to the northeast of the building?
Yes.
Okay.
Anybody else? I
Good
realize.
Good comments. Thank you.
Yeah, we're good, I guess, right? Thank you very much for bringing this to us. Appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for the time.
All right, moving on. Item 4D, which is a public hearing to discuss and consider approval of the general development plan submitted by Highlands of Netherwood, Plan development zoning with MR8 underlying zoning at 5264 County Highway CC, formerly known as the Tarkenton parcel, the flats. At this time, we'll open the public hearing. Again, Elise, you're on stage.
All right. So this parcel should look familiar to you all. We've seen a couple different versions of this layout for multifamily housing units over on the flats. Sort of started out as I think about 11 buildings and taking over some of the single family lots on phase 3, and then the scaled back to be entirely contained on what was the Tarkenton parcel and what's in the process of being annexed into the village. So where Ford Development Group has landed is about a 2.85 acre site with 51 units. It would be a mix, I think, of mostly 1 and 2 bedroom units. These are multifamily, rentals. The exceptions from the MR8 zoning code are laid out here, and then there are a couple of the SIP, of course, is coming up right after this, but a couple of things that we wanted to make sure are addressed on the final plans before we give sign off. Photometric plan, bike parking, building elevations with height, etc. And a couple of comments still outstanding from the village engineer, so we'll want to make sure those get wrapped up on the SIP before final approval. But I'll go ahead and scroll down to the site plan and then turn it over to the team from JSD and Ford Development Group to provide a little bit more background on their layout, and turn it over to you all for some questions and public comment.
Elise, I do have a question, or a couple of questions, and then maybe for you and for Jeff, Mr. Rao. We have Rooker Milky has they're not very substantial comments, they're not earth shattering, but there's a lot of them. Do either one of you see any issues with the comments, and whether or not those are just simply things that we can simply accept at this point? Jeff, you might know more on that.
Yeah, there's a lot of comments, but I think, most of them are pretty minor. I think what we would just say is any kind of recommendation you'd have would be contingent upon final approval by Director of Public Works and Planning Director or something.
Okay.
And a lot of these do overlap with some of my conditions of approval, like making sure the crosswalk markings are provided, things like that.
I see that. They provide stationing center lines for utility. I get it. That stuff's it's not earth shattering. Those are just really final comments and things put on the drawings, essentially what it is.
Yeah, we also have a couple of comments from the fire chief as well, just about making sure the hydrants are shown on the plan and all of that. So again, those are a little bit more, these are all a little bit more SIP comments, the site plan review rather than the zoning, but they definitely go hand in hand, and I know we'll get those wrapped up.
Okay. All right, I'm sorry. Let's move on. If we're ready, then the petitioner can make their comments. Is that correct?
Yeah, thanks everyone. Connor Kearney here with Forward Development Group, and thanks for Elise. It's all very should be similar to the group, but we do like where the project direction has gone. Elise kind of gave some of that background on where we originally started with the concept and what we've landed here. In order to accommodate the expansion of the regional stormwater facility to the east and some of the additional single family lots to the north. We really feel that this fits in nice to the context of the Highlands and Netherwood development and offers that transition to CC. So this evening we have JSD Senior Planner Jessica Vaughn with us as well. So she has a few talking points she'd like to go over, and a lot of them kind of overlap with the SIP as well. Which we can kind of talk through hand in hand. But at this time, I'll turn it over to Jessica Vaughn.
All right.
Sure, thanks. I guess I'll start by asking, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I feel like that's a necessary first, right? Okay, so before the commission this evening is the General Development Plan Specific Implementation Plan request for the Highlands of Netherwood flats. which is a multifamily residential development. Our goal in thinking about this development was really based on complementary and creating complementary to the existing neighborhood and single family residential that's to the north and some multifamily that's to the east. So we really wanted to have something that was complementary to and that fit within the existing context of the surrounding neighborhood and development. Overall, Elise touched on a lot of this stuff, so I'll just go over a quick high level. Overall, the multifamily development is comprised of a collection of 5 two-story buildings that is served by one centrally located access point from Peterson Trail. Internally, site circulation is accommodated with a series of private drives that are designed to serve more as alleyways. They're also providing shared parking as well as access to individual unit garages. With the goal of maintaining connectivity to the overall Highlands of Netherwood neighborhood, we've incorporated a number of pathways for pedestrians as well as multi-use paths, both with main pathways along County Highway CC, east-west, and then also with a larger pathway connection on the east side of the site that connects to the larger village-wide multi-use trail system. We do have multiple sidewalk connections that provide internal east-west also from Peterson Trail to that multi-use path and also to County Highway CC on the south side of the site there. We've incorporated a centrally located green space. The programming for this area is envisioned to include more passive recreation opportunities. Those amenities are anticipated to include grilling areas, outdoor seating, fire pits, dog recreation area, bike parking, as well as a bike repair station. A total of 51 units are proposed, which results in a net density of 17.89 dwelling units per acre. And overall, we generally feel that the development is in compliance with the village's comprehensive plan development goals and policies, especially those related to ensuring new development is compatible with its and fits within its surrounding context, as well as encouraging affordability and alternate housing options within the village itself. Just to touch on the discussion that was previously had with regard to staff comments from the fire department and from Rupert Milkey. We are anticipating being able to meet all of those if they're adopted as conditions of approval, but to address all of the staff comments, we don't have any issue with them. And we did make a resubmittal last week to the fire department, but haven't heard anything back from them as well. But tomorrow is our day for resubmitting a very large package to the village that includes the flats, any sort of comments that we got on the village, which is up next on the agenda, as well as addressing the final plat comments that we received as well.
Okay.
So with that, I guess I'll open it up for questions.
Anybody have any questions at this point? Do you have a spot here for public input? Is there anybody from the public, general public, have any questions of this development? Plan commission members, what did we say? Anything? We've seen this quite a bit, but go ahead. Anybody has any comments?
Are we discussing just the GDP or are we talking about the SIP at the same time?
It does state that the public hearing is to discuss the approval of the GDP. And down below, there's a discussion, possible recommendation to the village board of a SIP submitted by Highland.
My question specifically, Jessica, I heard you talk about outdoor amenities very quickly, but I don't see the outdoor amenities. And I just wonder if you can walk us through a little bit more clearly what's happening. I'm assuming it's all in that center island.
Yeah, so there's you can see kind of a half moon shaped paved area. Within that area, that's where we're going to be hosting our grill station and seating area. And then bike parking and bike repair would be adjacent. And if that's something that we wanted to incorporate into the SIP site plan, we could certainly update the site plan to reflect that.
That's your question, Patrick?
Yeah, I just don't see a lot of detail on it, so.
Elise, are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, I think that would be good to include on a, you know, if it's, depending what the planning commission's comfortable with, if it's the staff,
Okay.
you know, approval of the SIP, if we could see some more detail on the programming of that central space, that would be helpful.
Yeah,
Right.
we can also reach out to our operator and get just concept images of what those grill stations could look like, seating area, and same with the bike repair station. We have those images we could share just to give a better idea of the intent there to go along with an amenity plan kind of focused on that central spot.
This is Mike Slavny, the planning consultant for the SIP. The images will be binding, not conceptual. So choose those carefully.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we just want to make sure that that space does have some of those amenities and doesn't just remain as kind of open green space.
I have a question sort of regarding, will these units be rentals or will they be condos? And is this, if it's condos, will they be subdivided or will it be a big group development? And my angle on this is two things. One, if it's one development, do they need to provide an handicapped accessible stall? And then if they have a handicapped accessible stall, will that stall need to have ADA accessibility to the unit from that stall? And because you can't send somebody off site to get to the unit. Is that making sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Connor, do you want to take the first half and I can talk about the second half?
Yeah, absolutely. The product here is intended to be rental units. So the idea being that we'd offer a different residential opportunity within all of Highlands and Netherwood, and we'll talk about how that's varied with the villas and then ultimately the single family homes. But these are envisioned to be a rental product. And then Jess, I can let you jump in on the parking.
Sure, yeah. So at this point, undoubtedly there will certainly be a requirement to provide ADA accessibility and ADA units by the end user. Where those units are at this point, we're not 110% sure. That's a building code requirement. And when they go to submit their building permits, they will flesh that out at that time. All of the sidewalks within the site design are ADA accessible. So you will be able to have ADA accessible units as well as all the pathways to each and every individual unit.
Okay, but the only
Internally.
entry to the unit for a guest, if this is apartment rentals, you're sending somebody off your property to get to the front door on some of those middle units, if those are the accessible units. So I guess.
Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, and that I know you can't do.
Yep, no, exactly. If I had to guess, I would say the ADA accessible units are going to be those corner units on the ground floor.
Okay.
When
So
those get fleshed out with building codes.
All right, so even with the building code being what it is, on the site, we'll still need to have an access aisle. So that's something that we'll need to put into the comments.
For ADA parking?
Yeah, for your ADA parking, you'll need to have the access aisle for the stall and it'll need to be indicated. Yeah, the rest of my stuff is kind of SIP stuff. I think that, how many units did you have the last time you came in?
So for the last concept that we saw, this is pretty much exactly the same in terms of site design and unit count. But when we had the 11 buildings that had a much larger site that was 6 acres, I believe it was 110 units.
Correct. Yep.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, no other public input, no more plan commission comments, correct? Okay, we'll close the hearing at this time, move on to discussion and possible recommendation to the village board.
I got a question for Elise. Elise, if this is rental units, do we need to look at this differently for the number of the 5 guest parking stalls?
I don't believe, Mike Slavny, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't believe our parking requirements make any differentiation between rentals and owner occupied for guest parking, but I understand the question, and I know that's been a comment that you all have had, and we've stressed carrying forward, is making sure that there is that guest parking available and it's easy to find and access.
Correct. No differentiation in requirements.
Okay. All right.
So yeah, my understanding is that each spot or each unit gets a garage space and then one space sort of behind that in the driveway. There will be on-street parking along Peterson Trail. So that would be, another potential if there was a large, party or something going on at one of the units or in the green space for overflow.
That's correct.
And where the distance from the access aisle to the intersection is fine with our ordinance? Off of County Highway?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, we've looked at that distance and we're comfortable with that.
Okay. I guess I'd make a motion recommending to the village board the approval of the GDP for the Highlands of Netherwood LLC for planned development zoning for MR8 underlying zoning at 5264 County Highway CC, formerly known as the Tarkenton Project, the Flats, contingent upon staff comments and approvals and the accessibility concerns. And Patrick, your stuff, does that go under SIP or would
That's
that
going to be SIP, but I think you need to include in your motion, Rukert Milky, their comments.
I think I have that actually in my conditions of approval is final sign off from the village engineer. So that's already included.
I had staff comments, so that's kind of what I intended, but okay.
Okay.
Okay, everybody understand the motion? Do we have a second?
Second, Molzon.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Move on to item 4E, which again, that's a discussion of possible recommendation to village board of an SIP SIP submitted by Highlands of Netherwood LLC for 5264 County Highway CC, formerly known as the Tarkenton parcel, the Flats.
Pretty similar information here on the staff report in terms of conditions of approval, but maybe what would be helpful here is I will scroll back to the elevations and the site plan and let you all make some comments on those pieces.
While you're scrolling, Connor or Jackie, can you answer a question that I've got on the elevations? I think what you've come up with is an attractive building. The only comment I would have is two things. That you show gutters and downspouts on your building so that we understand where they're going to be. But the second thing was the only stone that you've got shown is at these columns. And it almost seems like an afterthought that the only place that you've got them, and I'm going to sneeze. Or not, is that you've got that's the only place that you've got them. And it almost seems like an afterthought. Is there any opportunity to maybe change up the masonry or the finishes on some of these buildings to add some stone to it? And will all the buildings be the same color, or will they be like two colors, or where's your head at on that?
Yeah, Jess, I can jump in on this one. In terms of the masonry, we can look with the architect to see where we can locate some more just to provide some variation. I can see it on that kind of gray siding that's all one color to mix up that facade treatment with some masonry. I think would definitely offer a better better visual appearance there. So we'll work with JLA to see what we can integrate in there to kind of improve, to get a little bit more visual variation. And then in terms of the coloring, right now, this is just a base, one of the concepts that we have. We haven't discussed that in particular, and I think it's going to be something that we follow up with management on for the building colors. If we do something, it's not going to be dramatic changes in color. It's going to look like one cohesive development, but just offering some slight variation might be something that could be beneficial for each sense of place for each building. So that's something I'll follow up with our operator on to get their thoughts and feedback on as well.
I appreciate it. Even if the front 2 buildings are the same and the back 3 buildings are a slightly different color,
right,
or maybe a top color. And I completely appreciate you, maybe like you had suggested on that secondary gable on the elevation that we're looking at right now, maybe there's some masonry on the bottom of it or something.
Just split it up, yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
I like John's comment about the masonry, but if you can't do it, or if it's minimal, one of the things that struck me with these elevations is that the light gray siding is predominant. In other words, it's the majority of the facade, particularly at the garage side. And so one of the things that I'd love to see your architect look at is increasing the width of that darker blue band. I was trying to look for a logic why they chose to put it where they did. And I think they probably selected the sill of the small windows, but increasing that 1 or 2 courses could help reduce the kind of monotony of that facade.
Yeah.
So that's my comment to the architecture.
Yeah, no, that's a great catch. It's a good suggestion.
Anybody else, any comments about the SIP? John, you did such a nice job. You're in a position to do a motion.
I make a motion to approve the SIP submitted by to the village board, submitted by the Highlands of Netherwood LLC for 5264 County Road CC, formerly known as the Tarkenton parcel, the Flats, contingent upon staff comments and the addition of some masonry and the back, let's call it the back elevation architecture to be approved by staff.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
And gutters and downspouts.
Okay.
And I think that needs to include staff review of outdoor amenities.
Oh, and include the, yes, thank you, Patrick.
Do we have a clear motion, you believe, at this point? Joy, did you get that?
Or can you wrangle it into
I
something?
got it.
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna trust Joyce. She also has a recording, so she'll get it straightened out exactly, but I think we all understand it. We just simply added the downspouts and et cetera on there. So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Patrick. Do we have any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Thank you. Item 4F. That is a public hearing to discuss and consider approval of revised general GDP submitted by Highlands of Netherwood LLC for planned development zoning with SR underlying zoning at lot 34, Highlands of Netherwood, formerly known as lot 41, the Villas. At this time, we'll open a public hearing. Staff reports, Elise.
So the major change here, again, we looked at a couple different conceptual layouts of the villas. This was lot 41, now renamed lot 34 as part of the replat. But when the Tarkenton parcel was purchased by Forward Development Group, that allowed the stormwater management pond that was originally planned for this area to be combined with that larger pond over on the east side of the flats development. So that allowed some things to get moved around, and the addition of 7 of these small lot, single family residential condo units to be added. So again, this is our SR6 small single family lot zoning district. That's the base zoning district to be built. You know, the requirements from a couple of flexibilities requested with regards to the setbacks, and a few comments just for the SIP. Again, these are revisions to the GDP and SIP, so those will be more addressed more in the SIP comments and review. But a couple of comments from Rooker Milky as well. I don't think I looked through these before, and again, I don't think that these are substantial enough that we would need to hold up any kind of approval, but we'll certainly make sure those get wrapped up and we get a final approval letter from them before you know, building permits or anything like that is started. Well, here's the site plan, and then I'll turn it back over to Connor and Jess to add a little bit more detail.
I like the fact that our engineer actually looks at the manhole rim elevations and checks them against the profiles. That's interesting. It's pretty good detail.
Very thorough. Yep.
Very thorough. Yeah, that's great. All right, so Connor, you're on.
Perfect. Thanks, Greg. So as you kind of stated earlier, this product, it's an opportunity to deliver an alternate housing product for the community and for Highlands and Netherwood. So the idea being, with the flats, you have your rental product. This would be, think of it as a carriage style home. These would be fee simple ownership homes. So you'd own your actual unit of land, but it's similar to a single family lot, but just a smaller footprint, a little more efficient, a different price point for maybe an entry level home buyer. So that in theory, if someone really liked the Highlands and Netherwood development in particular, or this portion or part of the community, if they work in and grow up, raise a family here, could start renting, could graduate to the entry level home, and then have single family home opportunities all within the same development. So, you know, especially in this day and age, in the construction environment that we're in, with costs where they are, we find a relatively more efficient product in this size with nicer finishes. It just offers an entry level price point, you know, similar to some of the stuff that Viridian's doing around the area. It's just efficiency in design and focus on nice finishes to create that variation of housing opportunity, and that's the focus here. So similar to the flats, I'll turn it over to Jess to kind of go through the talking points of the site layout and design.
Sure. So thanks, Connor. Before the commission this evening, we have the general development plan, specific implementation plan. This is actually an amendment for the Highlands of Netherwood Villas. Originally, this project, GDP and SIP, was approved in May of 2019. This request actually amends those approvals. Overall, the proposed GDP SIP carries forward the original design intent, including the private loop drive, the north-south and east-west connectivity with multi-use paths and sidewalks. I think that the large changes are a couple of things that Elise touched on earlier in her presentation, includes the elimination of a stormwater facility in the southeast corner of the site, which is really the result of a more efficient stormwater, more regional stormwater design with the incorporation of the Highlands and Netherwood Flats parcel. We also incorporated a landscape buffer along major thoroughfares. The landscape buffer is 30 feet, and this is to provide screening and privacy for those residential units from traffic on those major thoroughfares. And then finally, another change is just the increase in units from what was originally approved, 21 to 30. Overall, this development, like I said, carries forward the original design intent, and we feel that it's still generally consistent with the village's development goals and policies, especially those related to compatibility, maintaining single family character, and providing an alternate housing opportunity within the village. So with that, I guess I can answer any questions that you may have.
Okay. Are there any questions from the planning commission and or the public? Anybody in the public that is here to ask any questions about this particular part of the development?
Elise, in your comments, you had increase in under the general development plan revision request. The last bullet point is increase in condominium unit size from a uniform 4,200 square feet to a range of roughly 5 to 15,000 square feet.
Yes, and that was a typo.
Okay. Okay. Okay, that's all. Just
Yeah, that is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was trying to find where, I think it's minimum
That
of
Elise
5,000
may,
square feet. What was the top
yeah,
end? of
that
the-
may not actually be a typo. What happened is that the original development had a lot of common elements in it. And the underlying management, I'll say purchaser, Connor, and correct me if I'm wrong, they are looking to eliminate the common elements. And so what that did is it originally there, if you go back to the site plan, Elise.
Wasn't there one really large?
Yeah.
Really large?
Yes. So there was a very large common element yard, pretty much almost a ring around the entire development. So Unit 8 is really large and Unit 27 is really large. Originally, those were common elements. And same with the yards, the backyards along County Highway CC there. What we did is we increased the size of the condo unit to eliminate the common elements. And what that does is it changes the level of affordability because you don't have a homeowners association that is responsible for maintaining yards, snow removal, those sorts of things. So now it's up to the individual property owner.
got it.
Can you remind us the snow storage area, was that planned to be in that central kind of teardrop shaped island?
Yep. So we got a couple of areas for potential snow storage. One is kind of right where that island in the drive, and then there's a centrally located label that says retaining wall. We won't be storing snow on the retaining wall itself, but in that label, where that label is located, that's another great place for snow storage. There's a stormwater inlet right there as well.
Jessica, this is Mike Slavny. I think I heard you say you were eliminating the homeowners association.
Not completely. Tivoli Circle will still be part of that, but in terms of common elements and open spaces, that is primarily been eliminated, and all of those elements have been absorbed by the condo units themselves.
Aside from the open space in the island of Tivoli Circle.
That's correct. That's still, because that's where the mailbox is, that's where the lamppost is, but that's primarily what the HOA will be managing.
Thank you.
Okay. Any more questions?
Yeah, I have a question on the curb section. Is the curb continuous throughout the whole development, or is it reduced at the apron for each driveway?
The curb, oh no, yeah, the curb will be reduced at the apron of each driveway.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? No other questions, and we'll close the hearing. Move on to discussion, possible recommendation of the village board. Additional comments and questions by anybody? Plan commission. Go ahead.
Yeah, a question on the future multi-use path on the south border. When will that be developed and who's responsible for that development?
Oh,
Along County Highway CC.
Correct.
That is a village responsibility. That was an area when the entire neighborhood was plotted out. That was not called out as a responsibility for Forward Development Group to take care of. But Jeff, maybe you can speak a little bit to the timing of when we expect that path to be put in.
So when we did the development agreement, it was Mike and I and everyone, we all kind of said, well, yeah, this is one we missed. But as far as continuing the path along County Highway CC, that was one of the things that we did not write into the development agreement. So we've kind of come to terms with that. So we will be extending that path along CC, but now with the Tarkington parcel, that's something we haven't forgotten. And that's part of their development agreement. And so they'll be doing that path across the former property formerly known as the Tarkington parcel. And then we'll also extend that all the way down to Bergamot Boulevard in front of between Highway CC and the pond at Beehive.
Okay. Looks like we are ready for a motion to the village board. Do we have one?
I'll make that motion if I don't have to word it.
Let's just, would it be sufficient to say, Patrick, you will word the motion to exactly duplicate what is written on the agenda?
Yes, I think that'd be fine.
Okay, then we'll take that. I recommend the village board approval of the revised GDB plan, et cetera, et cetera. So I think we're okay with that. Everybody understands that? Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Marr. Is there any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you. Move on to item 4G, golf discussion, possible recommendation village board of the SIP revision submitted by Highlands of Netherwood LLC for lot 30 for Highlands of Netherwood, formerly known as lot 41 for villas.
And same site plan that we're on here. You can scroll back if you wanted to take a look at the conditions of approval. Here, I believe they're fairly minor.
Yeah, very minor.
But yeah, just the building elevations with the height, incorporation of a fire access site plan for the fire chief, and then wrapping up any comments from village engineer, public works director.
Okay.
Site plan here.
Anybody have any issues with that?
Again, I would have the same request to Jackie and to Connor on this one. The materials themselves, so that this doesn't look like little boxes on the hillside, because there's so many of them so close.
Mm.
Is there any opportunity, or can you look at opportunities to change up masonry? They don't even have to all have masonry, but to maybe put masonry at different locations, maybe different colors, different materials in the gables. Maybe they don't have shakes, maybe they're a vertical siding, something.
Yeah, definitely. And it kind of ties back to how we have this project structured. So it's a separate ownership group that's coming in to do this development. And within that ownership group, there's an architect, there's a contractor, there's a realtor, that and together they form the project team essentially. So the idea is that there would be a few options for different products. So you could choose from one to three, I think, or something they're talking about, 1 to 3 different options for the home itself. So that's, variations might be in facade. The facades will likely be relatively similar, but the color treatments, we want to create variation in all these. We want it to be unique. We understand it's a cohesive development, but we do want the individual homes to have a feel of uniqueness between them. So they're going to give the consumer a selection of 1 to 3 different color choices. Out of the gate, the plan right now, it may change in the future, but the plan right now is to build these 4 at a time. So we would start the momentum by choosing 4 plans and build those in a phased approach to create the momentum and interest. And then as we develop through that, offer the consumer the option of choosing between different color choices on the plan.
So Connor, would it be fair to say that it's similar to conventional single-family housing in that the buyer is making exterior choices.
Correct, and a lot of that's going to be, it's going to be limited to what the options are. You know, there's going to be 1 to 3 option levels they could choose from. It's not going to be a blank slate custom home, and that's simply to keep the cost of the homes within range of that entry level product. But yes, in terms of operations and how the development structured, it's very similar to your traditional single family lot type home development.
Okay. Any other questions? Concerns, comments?
I guess just with that comment, with the
Go ahead.
consumer making some choices on the siding, is the planning commission comfortable with, you know, sort of leaving that open-ended, or would you like staff to receive some sort of color palette or more examples of similar products, just so we have that on file and can see that there is going to be that variation?
You know, I don't know, John, what's your thought on it? I guess I don't have a problem with that. The only thing is I thought I heard the applicants say that they would have just not a limited, but only a certain number of colors and floor designs, et cetera, available.
For me, it's it's in the developer's best interest not to have 12 homes the same next to each other.
Right.
So I think that the market will kind of bear that out a little bit. I would just ask for, that's why I don't want to put it into a motion. I just like to have a friendly request that you try to mix it up a little bit.
Right, and that's in the best interest of the development itself, you know, just from visual appearance and driving through and the marketability of these homes too. And, you know, how that plays out is somewhat subjective. It's going to be driven by the market. So if we have good interest on the homes that go up, if the ownership group does decide to do those 4 specs off the bat, and if there's interest in the demand to keep moving through and putting more spec out there, if we find that the selections that are being put on spec are being bought and that products fitting the market, then it's going to be less consumer involvement on choosing X, Y, and Z, and more of us creating the variation and fitting the market for the buying the spec. It's all going to be market driven.
I'm comfortable with that. Just wanted to clarify how much detail the planning commission wanted to see.
Well, it sounds like, again, the market will dictate that to a certain extent, and I'm sure we're not going to have a whole rainbow of colors. It'll probably be some very subtle and standard that we see around the village. So
Don't want people driving into the wrong house because it looks like theirs, right?
But I mean, it's similar to a single family development. There'll be covenants, restrictions, and there'll be variation requirements and all that. You know, we don't require a certain home on the rest of Highlands and Otherwood, but the covenants and restrictions do present those guidelines and how you design. So it'll be a similar approach here.
Okay. John, you're about to make a motion?
I'll make a motion. Make a motion to recommend to the village board the SIP for the Highlands and Netherwood, 34 of Highlands, formerly known as Lot 41, the Villas, contingent upon staff comments.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Mr. Marr. Is there any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you all. I know it was a busy agenda tonight and it wasn't as exciting as a brew pub or a new Culvers, but I do appreciate all the thought and comments.
They're
We got
all
one,
exciting.
we got one more,
All-
Connor.
Yep.
Yeah,
They're
you
all
got one more,
exciting.
Connor. You're not done yet.
Yeah.
We'll speak to you
Fun
soon.
ones. This one's the most fun.
Yeah.
Is it? Just a minute, I got it. Click in again on another computer, make sure I'm still good. I got a weak signal is what it's telling me.
Uh-oh.
Okay, yeah, I know. Item 4H, public hearing, discuss and consider the approval of the zoning map amendment submitted by Highlands of Netherwood LLC for portions of 10 parcels of the Highlands of Netherwood development. At this time, we will open the public hearing. Staff report.
All right, this one is very exciting. So as part of the phase 3 replat, there were a couple parcels. A lot of these are related to the stormwater management pond, the shared use path, the discontinuation of Lindell Street and the kind of creation of a cul-de-sac there, realigning of some of the paths again. So the exhibit here does show the rezoning. Most of these again are from a portion of like a single family lot to rural holding, which is what we hold our public improvement park related uses in, or vice versa. If it was an area to be part of the path and now is going to be part of a lot going back the other direction, but just some small little pieces here. And because it's a rezoning, zoning map amendment, we're required to do a public hearing, but no substantial, changes in the uses here, just cleaning up a couple of these little portions. And again, this was the stormwater management pond area that was originally planned for the villas that we just took a look at. Now that'll be incorporated into the pond up here. So these are now going to be buildable single family lots. That red area. But I think that's pretty much it. Pretty straightforward.
Come on, come on.
So it's just basically house cleaning stuff.
Yep. Just wrapping up one of, this is step 17 of 500, but yeah.
You're still with us, Greg?
Yeah, I left you for a little while. I don't know if you can still see me when I leave, but I came back.
We see you.
If you saw
Connor
me
and
doing this, that's what I was doing. Nobody was, you guys are all frozen.
uh-oh, I hate when that happens.
Yeah.
Connor and Jess, I don't know if there's anything else to add here, but again, really just housekeeping with making the land uses with that replat match, their intended land uses.
Yep, no, just consistency with the final plat. I don't know if Jess has anything to add, but I don't.
All right.
Yeah, I don't either. Elise, you did a really great job of stealing the show on this one.
But I get to go first.
All right, so we've had staff comments, we've had petitioners' comments. Are there any public comments? Plan Commission. Pretty cut and dried. All right, so at this point, we're going to close the hearing, have a discussion and possible recommendation of the village board.
So moved. Bino.
Got it. And we have a motion, we have a second.
Second, Severson.
Severson, hey, you got in there, Mark. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We got through most of this.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Oh, yeah, you can stick around. You can stay with us if you'd like, so. Item 4I, discussion possible recommendation of village board, preliminary plat and final plat of K Court, 769 Janesville Street, Habitat for Humanity Development.
Hi, this is Jackie Montos from Beerbicker on behalf of Habitat for Humanity of Dane County. And I believe it is pronounced Kai Court. Can you?
Oh, really? Sorry.
Is that correct, Steve? I think you're on mute.
Yes, it absolutely is. It's in recognition of one of your residents, Arlen Kai, who is an architect and pretty active in the community. And he's been a part of Habitat for a long time. So we thought it was very appropriate to name this in recognition of him.
Okay, absolutely. Thank you.
So in front of you is the preliminary and final plat for the Kai Court development. It's a planned development you're familiar with, 1.25 acres that has been, we're proposing 8 0-lot line duplex units and 1 single family residential unit. There will be 3 outlots associated with this layout, including the stormwater facilities, the private road, and some streetscaping elements, including signage. So this is the old Hallelujah Campgrounds Bible Camp. And so some of those artifacts that are currently existing on the property will be relocated as best they can in those outlots. The GDP was submitted and approved, and the SIP was conditionally approved on April 15th. And as a result of all of those comments, here is the final result of the plats.
And Jackie, your intention is that that larger home, just for clarity, that would be, once the plat is approved, that would be sold out off separately and not part of the habitat development, but sold just kind of on the open market.
That is correct.
And then, yep, okay. And then the duplexes would be built. Is your construction window still likely 2022 to start these?
From what I understand, that is correct.
That is correct.
Okay.
Okay. We've seen it. We all understand it. We approve it. We like it. So how about a motion? Okay. I'm going to do one for a change. Move that we have a recommendation Village Board for approval of preliminary plat and final plat for Kai Court, 769 Janesville Street, Habitat for Humanity development. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Meyer, second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, item 4J. Conceptual discussion, Autumn Ridge Phase 2 Parkland Dedication Park features. Elise, you're back on again.
All right. So
We'll do here at least in about a month. You better get it all in here because otherwise we just skip all the meetings.
All right, so just wanted to share a sort of an FYI for the Planning Commission. We brought this to the Park Board a couple of weeks ago, but in the Autumn Ridge neighborhood, a lot of the adjacent neighborhoods, did not have park spaces as part of their development back in the 90s and early 2000s. The Foxborough Golf Course was sort of sold as a community green space, but obviously it's not usable year-round and not usable by all members of the community. So we have heard from some members of the neighborhood kind of existing in Autumn Woods, and then folks that have moved into phase 1 of Autumn Ridge, that they would love to see a playground as part of the parkland dedication area for phase 2 Autumn Ridge, which again is this, I know it's a little hard to see, but it's this outlot 6 here. This is on a slope, and so the engineer has done a lot of work to try to get a usable flat rectangular area in the park. I think what we've determined from staff is, we would need to talk about where funding for the playground would be. I think there's some interest from the neighborhood to do some of that, fundraising themselves or grant opportunities, things like that. But I don't know if we could create a larger flat usable space just sitting on the site, but it may end up being that we have a smaller multi-use playing field that could be used by youth sports or just families that want to throw their frisbee around or whatever. But if a playground would be integrated into the park design, it would kind of likely need to be within this general envelope. So I don't know if anybody else has any comments, or Jeff, you wanted to say anything about just kind of the site layout here, but I think we'll just try to maybe continue those discussions with the neighborhood. And as this phase gets built, I think the site work the developer is hoping to do starting Labor Day, kind of through the fall of this year, kind of work alongside Public Works and see what might fit in that park space.
Makes sense. Anybody have any comments about that or any questions? They just wait and decide what they want for playground equipment.
I appreciate the fact that they've created a flat enough space for a playing field for soccer. But, I mean, if push comes to shove and it turned into two smaller at two different level areas, and it was landscaped with a smaller playing field for Frisbee and one for smaller kids, I think that'd be a nice amenity as well for the neighborhood, but I guess it's up to kind of them to figure that out.
Yeah.
Just a little bit from our perspective is we're really hurting for larger play fields in the village. for soccer practice, the ultimate, the lacrosse, the rugby, all of those ones that require the bigger fields. And so it's been a push of ours all along that as part of phase 2, they would have to provide enough of a usable space for kind of a large, competition level, not tournament level, but competition level soccer / play field. Yeah, it's stuff I'd like to be able to fit in like a playground amenity over there, but it's right along that slope, and playgrounds and slopes don't go real well together.
Yeah.
Sledding hills do.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think it could be a nice little sledding hill, actually.
Okay, sounds like it's a good idea. So without any questions, we'll just move on and say, yep, that's a good idea. Okay, we're gonna go on to 4K, discussion, possible recommendation of village board regarding proposals for architectural engineering design services for the JC Park concession and building stand. We have in the packet, essentially there's 3, and I guess at least I'll let you just describe it. You can do it better than I am anyway. So.
Okay. So back in the fall, I believe we brought this to planning commission meeting and probably a village board meeting as well, but conceptual design for JC Park, and actually Blake Hebert, who I don't know if he's still on with us from Supreme Structures, put this together, and Dan and Blake were kind enough to donate these conceptual design services in kind. So it's kind of, receive the blessing of the village as a concept for the concession, restroom, scoring area of the new JC Park West renovation. Kind of been sitting with that for a little while, and then at this point, we've been working with Rutler Corporation on the larger site park design, and have the goal to bid that out later this year, early next year, for construction in the spring of 22. And so we thought it was time to kind of, the concession stand, we are imagining that will be a separate contract, but we kind of want to keep that along similar timelines, so that after, as soon as site work begins and a pad is ready, that the concession stand construction could start. So the next step is taking this concept to construction documents that would actually be able to be bid out, later this year, early next year. So Dan helped us out, reached out to a couple different engineering and architecture firms. So we have 3 submittals. A couple of them, Angus Young is kind of a one-stop shop, all services in-house, versus others would be led by an architect, and then subbing out the MEP and structural engineering services with others. They've all donated sort of a reduction in their fee or in-kind donation. So depending on which firm we would end up going with, that in-kind donation amount would count towards our community fundraising goals for the village. So the village board has committed $4 million to this project. We had the initial goal for fundraising of 500,000. We're about 260,000 right now for fundraising. So again, any in-kind services or materials that would go for any elements of the park, whether it's the concession stand or the park itself, will count towards that amount. But if we can't get to that total 4.5 million, we'll look at some of the features of the park and see if there's anything that can be eliminated at this time and still move the project forward. So these amounts here in yellow are what the actual cost to the village would be. Mostly just looking for any feedback from the planning commission if any of you have worked with any of these firms or have any recommendations. Otherwise, we'll just move this forward to the village board and ask them to choose a firm. But I think a recommendation from the planning commission would be helpful for the board.
You mean as far as choice of one?
Yes. Yeah, because I think we'd like to get going on it this summer. So I think choosing one, and all these firms are kind of ready at the waiting if they're chosen to jump into the design.
Well, I've had experience with one of them, but not real strong experience. Anybody else about, probably nobody else in Plan Commission has.
Worked with Angus Young, OPN, Hein Engineering, Sketchworks, and MP Squared.
Yeah, you have, okay.
Yeah, or at least I've seen drawings from them.
Mhm.
And I think that working with Sketchworks, MP Squared, and Tailored, which I don't know, you'll be fine. They'll do nice work.
Which is the most economical of the bunch.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, OPN and Echelon would be good as well. Angus Young would be thorough, but I think that you're for what we're looking for, you're going to be fine with either of OPN or Sketchworks.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate
I
it.
do know these are all firms that Dan has worked with on various projects too. So I imagine anybody he did not have a good experience with, he probably wouldn't have reached out to.
Yeah.
So if everybody's comfortable, then, you know, and again, John, you've got more experience with them than I do, but I have worked with the one. Obviously Dan's got some experience with them, and he wouldn't have put this up there without, you know, he's putting his name out there in front of it. So I guess I'm comfortable with the Sketchworks, as you mentioned.
So are you
Anybody
really
else?
looking for a recommendation, Elise, or is this sort of just like validating?
So Elise, this is Randy. For I think for the village board, I think the village board we would like a recommendation, I think.
Yeah,
I think that would
let's
be
have a
best.
motion.
All right, well, okay, after hearing what John has said and stuff, I have to echo that then, and that'd be my preference at this point. So how does everybody else feel? Anybody have any objections to that before we put into a form of a motion?
No.
Okay, let's, we'll need a motion to recommend the village board looking at and accepting a proposal for architectural and engineering design service for J.C. Park concession stand building from Sketchworks Architecture. Can somebody other than John make that?
Yeah, I'll make that, Patrick.
Thank you. And we have a motion. We have a second.
I'll second. Glish will second.
Glish second. Thank you. Any discussion?
Before we vote, because I've worked with some of these people and we're recommending, should I abstain?
For your own benefit, I would suggest you do.
Okay, I'm abstaining then.
All right, thank you. Okay, a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, good. Randy, thank you for asking us to do that.
Yeah.
We're done with public hearing, the public appearances, as far as I know. Okay, moving on, communication miscellaneous business. The next plan commission meeting is Wednesday, June 30th. It is a joint meeting with the village board, comprehensive plan amendment, public hearings. Keep that in mind. I think we all discussed that earlier. And again, just highlighting that the meetings we're going to have for the rest of the summer, Thursday, August 3rd, I will not be here. And then Thursday, September 9th, I plan to be here. And if anybody else, if anybody's not going to be for those meetings, please let the staff know. We want to make sure we have quorums.
Yeah, and just to add, Greg, I believe starting after the 4th of July, our public meetings will be back in person. So just keep that in mind. The June 30th meetings will likely be on Zoom, but after that, our plan at this point is to be meeting in person.
So the August 5th will be in person, and well, but what's the timetable again for the new village hall?
Probably early 2022.
Okay, all right.
Winter, yeah, springtime.
Got it. All right, thank you. Unfinished business, let's get this one. The review of zoning code requirements for parking standards for Atkinson versus Oregon. And possible recommendation to village board. Elise has gone through some work on this. So again, you're gonna go ahead and tell us about it.
Okay. So got some help from Ben Rohr and Mike from Vandewall. So the Fort Atkinson code, we chose to kind of take a look at. This is a follow-up from our last planning commission meeting and discussion about the library parking challenges over on that site. So Fort is a pretty similarly sized community. I think they might be around 12,000, but their code was written by Van Wall, was just recently adopted in fall of 2020, and generally follows kind of the more modern or current land use recommendations for parking requirements, pretty similar ones that you'll see in other types of similarly sized communities. So what I've done here is try to provide the most apples to apples comparison of use categories that both Fort Atkinson and Oregon have. There are a lot of uses that just because we have an older code that was adopted in 2006, we haven't adopted yet, like a live work unit, physical activity studio that's kind of included in our personal services. So those types of uses where you see NA, that's just where we don't have that exact type of use. And maybe once we do more of a comprehensive zoning code update, we'll be able to update those sections. But they're the areas where our code varies from their code in terms of parking requirements are highlighted in yellow. Again, Oregon's are on the right-hand side. So there are a lot of uses, a lot of commercial office uses, mostly where the parking requirements, again, they've all pretty much gone in a, for Fort, gone in a reduction of parking requirements direction, not an increase. This large section is indoor institutional, so that includes churches, museums, schools, hospitals, as well as libraries. And this particular use, the one space per every 400 square feet versus one space for every 250, that's where, if this was one of the zoning text amendments that you all wanted to move forward with, that could really make a big difference in terms of the requirements for on-site parking for the library site. But I didn't want to focus just on those uses, and again, it's a lot of work to go through the text amendment and doing the ordinance, so I thought it would just be worth kind of highlighting the areas where there are differences in the requirements, and then leave it up to you all in terms of what you wanted to recommend, if anything, for changing one or multiple categories in our zoning code to kind of reflect 15 years later where planners see parking requirements that are aligning with current use of these different types of businesses and housing types and all of that.
Mike, Slavny, you're still with us, right?
Yes.
Okay. And at least I think you had anything else you were going to say at this point?
No, that's
okay.
all.
Yeah. Mike, obviously you've done both of these for Fort Atkinson and for us. And you've obviously also, I suspect, done a considerable amount of research when you did the Fort Atkinson to bring it up to I don't know if I want to use the word more modern, because that probably dates some of us, but
right, Greg. These, for the most part, reflect the recommendation of the Institute of Transportation Engineers, and they provide both trip generation numbers for these land uses and parking requirement numbers. And the predominant shift is that we were using their, I believe it was 2002 book when we did the Oregon code. And for the four most recent codes we've done, Monroe, Fort Atkinson, Jefferson, and Wausau, we've had their most recent book, which just came out in 2015, I think. And so we were seeing these downward trends. I believe there are a couple that went up. The one that I noticed was campground requirements. So they didn't all go down. And these are based on kind of a census of parking that the ITE does nationwide. A lot of very technical people, including transportation engineers, put a lot of faith in these numbers, and they are the best broadest researched and they have the largest census of samples that are available. So I've always trusted them since I started writing codes in 1983. And, from my standpoint, I want to reflect best practices in the zoning codes we write. And so these are the best numbers that are broadly available for all of the land uses in the zoning code.
And that's the reason I asked you, Mike. I want to make sure, and I suspect that you went to some source that's reliable and very usable. And again, like you mentioned, the professionals that help design that information or put the information together are highly qualified in what they're doing.
Right. I would estimate that this represents millions and millions of dollars worth of accumulated studies.
Right. So, I don't have a problem. So I guess where do we go from here with this thing? Are we in a position where, as a village, are we prepared to redo our parking requirements for the village? And the reason I bring that up, we're sitting here right now with this issue with the library. If we're gonna do something, let's do it probably right, and that means just change the code, so that we, rather than just spot checking different things to make it consistent or make it more convenient for us to approve something. I don't know how you all feel about that, but
I got a question, Mike. You had said that this comes from some traffic engineering study, and that takes into account everybody from across the country, correct?
Correct.
So this takes into account both suburban and urban areas?
That's a great question. You can go into the bibliography and look at where the studies are from. And, based on the communities that I recognize, they're almost entirely suburban communities where, frankly, the great majority of new development is occurring. And, they're looking at what are communities, what is the actual use ratio occurring in these new developments? And so they tend to be heavily tilted towards suburban communities. And, they were using urban communities, even as, small as Madison, things like public parking ramps would be skewing the data. So I think the numbers that ITE collects, Oregon should trust. I think the numbers are coming from comparable communities.
Greg, Randy Glacier, can I speak?
Yeah, certainly.
I always ask permission. So a couple things. What Mike was saying, and it sounds like you mentioned other communities are sort of looking at their parking requirements. I like that, but me as a former scientist, I like good words used for me are best practices. That's like the gold standard of looking at this sort of stuff. And I have to say, you said it's been 15 years since we looked at this, and things have changed. So I like the idea of us taking a look. And I'm not saying that just because, I support the library. It seems like a thing for us to do it and look at these other areas too. But, you did the homework, and I like best practices. That's music to my ears.
Thank you, Randy. I'm confident that these numbers do reflect the best data that's out there, the most comprehensive data, and and the most used data because of the work that ITE puts in. And the work that I did initially was to research who has the best numbers, and that was true almost 30 years ago, and it remains true today.
Yeah, so I appreciate what you and Elise have done to present this to us. Thank you.
Thanks, Randy.
One thing we've asked Mike, a couple of times is the communities that have made these changes and reduce the parking requirements, again, to align with the more up-to-date recommendations from ITE. Have they seen any, conflicts, or have they regretted the decision to reduce the requirements? And it doesn't seem like there's been those issues in the communities that have adopted these updated requirements. Again, it's just part of keeping your code in line with modern use and travel patterns, and as we're seeing more work from home for offices and things, it makes sense that you would see parking requirements for those type of uses be reduced over time.
Right, and to give you a specific number, in 30 of the communities, I remain active, for the 40 that I've written codes. And not one of those communities has ever increased the parking requirement. And not one of the communities that has reduced the parking requirement, to my knowledge, has ever reported to me that that was a mistake. So you also have, I think, the direct experience of 30 other Wisconsin communities that are, actively using these numbers.
One thing, as we speak about this, so I don't know where we're going to go with this yet, but caution. There was discussion before about, this 25, we can reduce the count of a particular parking lot by or parking area by 25%. That may not come into play any longer. So just I'm going to caution everybody that just because it's been stated before, we reduce parking at this point, then the leeway for making some changes or agreements are somewhat limited. Does that make sense?
I think maybe another way to word that would be just, if the parking requirement for a certain use changes, and it would just need to be kind of reevaluated, given where the parking requirement is now, and again, making sure that whatever number is agreed upon, if a flexibility is given, that still is going to be adequate for whatever
sorry to interrupt again here. Let me just talking out loud here. And possible recommendation village board to pursue zoning text amendment for.
So I think the direction I would need would be, would the planning commission make a recommendation to amend all of the use categories to match the Fort Atkinson requirements in the spaces, where there's the yellow highlight there, or do we want to kind of cherry pick some uses and focus on those? But again, I think the effort that's put into writing the ordinance and doing the public hearing, it's worthwhile.
It's, if you're going to do it, I guess try to tell me, it'd be just as easy to do it all as opposed to, and cherry pick is a bad term for me. So I'd like this, I'm thinking that then we do something that is consistent across the board. No more questions asked. We've updated it and we've renewed it based upon the most accurate information available to us at this time. And it'd be the right way to do it. Anybody, how you all? I see Randy shaking his head.
I agree, Greg. If you're gonna do it, don't just do it for one.
Yeah, don't do it for one. No, don't do it.
Because it'll come back to bite us.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. Be consistent.
And I also, I want to have a candid conversation about them, because I went through each one of these uses, and the ones that I'm familiar with, I just kind of did some quick math with quick projects. And, for example, an office, I just picked a standard office size and what you could get for office space and what that equates to for number of people. And in the 1 per 400, I can see where it would work, but in the reality, the 1 per, you would be
Come on back to me.
You'd be pretty underparked for a typical office type use. That's just one that I just kind of put some sketching on. So I agree. We can't just do 1 or 2 of these. We have to do all of them, and we have to have a very candid conversation about if they'd work.
Question I would ask whether you would make them retroactive to existing businesses or zoning areas that you would want to make them maybe under certain conditions or maybe all conditions that they go retroactive and cover people that have invested in extra parking that they really don't need by today's standards, that you back off a ways and make it a little more agreeable for everybody that way.
Well, I understand what you're doing there, Larry, but how about if we change the standards and that particular entity wants to reduce their park, come back and ask us, and then we would make that approval. As opposed to if you just went retroactive, then who all gets affected? And I see that maybe getting a little bit. They're gonna come back and ask us anyway, or ask staff.
Right. I think I would see that all, uses that are in play right now, obviously they're grandfathered in under the code that they were approved under at that time. But then there are any site plan revisions, or maybe they want to expand a business, but maybe not expand the parking lot. At that point, we would look at whatever the most current parking requirements are at that time and see if that's adequate for that. They would fall under the new.
And John, I'm sorry, when you were making your comments, I lost you. I went dark again. When you started your comments about you went to all of these and you had some particular ones you had a concern with. I lost you when you talked about your office building. You got halfway through it and I lost you.
I went through each one of these uses.
Okay.
And a good number of them I can get completely on board with reducing the number of parking stalls. Some of them I would need some convincing on, just purely because I've actually done them and I've got a good relationship and understanding of them. And they seem a little tight if we reduce the numbers. So maybe there's some middle ground on them. Maybe it's 350 for an office example. Instead of we go down to 400, maybe it's fuzzy math and we go to 350.
Okay.
I don't know, but I'm just picking on office because it's right in front of me right now.
Mm-hmm.
Do you actually have did you write anything down that would be usable? I don't want you to have to go through all kinds of work like that for the village. Give us some, you've got it. You went through every one of them, so you must have written something down, knowing you.
Yeah, I did.
Okay, so how much is it going to cost us to get it?
Are there a lot of those uses, John? Would it be worthwhile to bring up right now, or do you want to send those to me separately?
No, it's my sort of chicken scratch. I guess if I'm going to do this, I'd like to get it into something that's more legible.
Okay.
And one thing to keep in mind, and this page that Elise has up is the right page to have up, is we look at those uses that have the 1 per 300. Office professional service like an attorney or a psychiatrist, a tax advisor, indoor sales, those three often change to one of the other two. That those kind of spaces are frequently in flux. And so it's always been my objective for those three anyway, to use the same ratio. Because it would just be chaos if they had different numbers. And let's say the office was the highest requirement. We can't let you change that space from retail to office because you are short 3 parking spaces in the parking lot. So that's the one caveat I would make. Some of these uses, and these are the most important 3, I think having the same ratio makes a lot of sense.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, John, if you don't mind, I'd appreciate it very much if you do that. Just send it to Elise and then she can take it from there. Just a wonderful servant to the village. Yeah.
For the next couple of weeks, we'll see. This is probably my last planning commission meeting.
Back again. I made a nice speech for John, and then I lost my connection again.
We heard it.
How in the world can you hear it? Because you guys aren't moving.
I think maybe your video gets frozen, but your audio's
Oh,
moving
so I
forward.
gotta be careful. Okay, so I know now to watch what I say. Okay, I got it.
Greg, every time you talk, we all freeze. Just
That's it. Got it. Didn't realize I had that. Well, let's get through this before I lose you guys again. All right, so I don't know if we need a motion at this particular time, do we?
Not yet.
Yeah, I'd say we wait yet until we get, at least if you want to go back and take another kick at it or have somebody help you with that, because obviously you're getting close to, you want to wrap some things up here.
Right, yeah, we'll still have to come forward with a formal ordinance for the zoning text amendment. So imagine we'll discuss this a little bit at the village board on Monday, and then I'll work with Martin to figure out the timing of writing the ordinance. That requires a public hearing too, so that might, depending on the timing, we'll see if that gets to the June 30th or the August 5th meeting.
All right, good, thank you. Okay. Let's move on then to new business. There's none there. Staff reports. We got a lot going on in the village. Why are we going down? Just curious. Why are we going down the middle of the street with the water main?
Because the other water main and the sewer mains in one lane and the water mains, the old water mains in the other lane. So, yep.
So then when we break a water main, we're gonna dig up the whole damn street. So, okay.
Just the center.
Just the center. Well, we got brand new ductile iron pipe. It shouldn't go for a while.
That the pipe that we're replacing has failed numerous times, especially in that neighborhood at Richards Road there.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so that's the main thing that's going on, right?
Yeah, construction wise, that's the main disruption we have going right now. Yes.
When is that complete? What do you, I know you, I saw it, but when are you gonna think we're gonna get done?
That'll be through the next, oh, wow. I want to say it's wrapping up at end of July into August.
That's
they're actually ahead of schedule right now, or
Wow.
at least the Speedway Sand and Gravel is with the water main and sewer project. Dane County is waiting on a permit from DNR, but they're usually pretty quick, but it'll take a couple months.
That's still pretty fast. That's pretty
It
fast.
is. It is.
Just water main, I didn't look, our storm water is not being touched at all, is it?
No, water main, it's water, the utility portion is water main, some sewer lining, some sewer replacement. And almost all the manholes along there were old brick and block manholes, and those have been upgraded to reinforced concrete.
Yeah, that's why
And
okay.
Huh?
That's
Yeah,
why you had all those new cones and stuff sitting there, the tops and the barrels. Okay.
Yep, exactly. And then Dane County will be doing 100% curb and gutter replacement and all new ramps throughout the project, and then full depth pavement reconstruction and everything. Then it's ours.
Yeah, that's right. Then it's ours. That's curb lines remain the same location. We're not
Curb
widening
lines
them?
remain the same, yes.
Okay, all right.
It'll be striped though for bike lanes each
That's
direction.
what I heard, which is great.
Yep.
That's excellent. Okay, anybody else have any questions about it? Looks like we got a good project going here and it's great.
Jeff, I had a question. We talked about the library and there being a pedestrian crosswalk with lights.
Correct.
Is that going to require cutting up the road again? And, has there been any thought to putting a sleeve in so that, once that happens, they
We've
won't have
talked about it, but unfortunately, we just don't know where it is. So if anything, we'll just do a boring.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, we just don't have the library has not gone into design yet, and I'll guarantee if we put a sleeve one place, it'll be at another.
Yeah, that's kind of what I figured, but
Yeah.
if they could accomplish it by boring, then it
Yeah.
won't be an issue.
Yeah, and I'll say publicly again, I oppose utilizing the school parking lot. Okay.
Oh, was that on the agenda?
No.
I didn't see it here.
The chair can do what he wants.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot about that.
Yes, that there is one advantage. There's one advantage. I just want to make sure. Okay.
Overflow parking on Richards Road.
Okay, there you go. And you're gonna commute, then you're gonna provide commuter
Bus
buses or
service.
something,
Bus
right?
service.
Yeah, okay. future meetings, we sure got a lot of stuff for future meetings, don't we?
We'll do some sort of, at some point, maybe when I'm back in the fall, we'll do some kind of a workshop and hopefully a lighter agenda. We'll get through some of these items that should have their own time for discussion. So
Okay, great.
those are just so I don't forget. You
All
put them
right.
on every agenda.
All right. Good meeting, everybody. Thank you very much. You have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Bino.
Second by?
Second, Larry.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
All right.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a good
Bye,
evening.
everybody.
Bye-bye.